I'm really thrilled that you can come and join me today for the fourth of 6 talks I'm giving entitled Evil Women. And today, of course, it is Matahari. I want to start with a poem. It's a poem by Susan Gubernat, and it's called Sharing a Birthday with Matahari. And it goes like this. She refused the blindfold, faced 12 raised guns, men's erections so familiar to her. She blew them a kiss before the last captain emptied his charge into her ear to ensure her death. Already dead, wasn't she? And in the arms of Shiva. Matahari was said to be an evil woman. They spoke of her as this kind of perverted Eve, woman as schemer, corrupter of man and mankind. They hurled the witch insult at her. Like Amelia Dyer, they accused her of murdering innocents. 50,000 French soldiers allegedly died due to her treachery. As the prosecutor at her court-martial proclaimed, Matahari was perhaps the greatest woman spy of the century. The evil that this woman has done is unbelievable. But I think this poem points to cultural conceptions of evil that have not been explored yet in the series of talks. These are evil femininity as deadly, the little deaths of multiple orgasms, those men's erections so familiar to her, and the wartime deaths, of course, of betrayed French soldiers. The poem draws attention to the performativity of femininity, the story that she blew a kiss to her executioners. And then there is Shiva, the god of destruction, into whose 4 arms she fell after death. For me, Matahari's evil was nothing more or less than the terror of unbounded female sensuality in wartime, coinciding with assumptions of female duplicity. But before we turn to her transgressions, I really had better explain who was Matahari. Well, she was born Margaretha Zell in a northern Dutch town, 1876. Her much-loved father was a well-off hat merchant and her mother a wealthy Dutch aristocrat. What started out as sort of this idyllic childhood turned sour when her father became bankrupt and deserted the family, and then her mother died. She and her 3 brothers were sent to live with different relatives. She was a pretty girl in a male world. An affair with the headmaster of her school saw her expelled, and he doesn't seem to have suffered any consequences. To her rescue came Captain Rudolph MacLeon, who was twice her age and served in the colonial army of the Dutch Indies. Margaretha accompanied him to Java and Sumatra, but he was a violent alcoholic who took pleasure in publicly humiliating her. She divorced him and fled to Paris, where she adopted the nom de stage Matahari, from the Malay word meaning eye of the day. And this was when she began performing as an exotic dancer. She was actually one of a number of famous dancers, mostly of the expressionist dance movement of the time. And it included people like dancers like Allan, of which we're going to hear more later, who danced nude or in scanty costumes. They were a new kind of dancer, very thin, unlike their large-hipped and bosomed predecessors, and self-styled new women, unafraid of risque performances of the Salome dance, named after that Femme Fatale who demanded that King Harold kill John the Baptist and deliver his head to her on a plate. But I'd like to suggest that Matahari was different. Her entire life was a highly gendered performance. She was a liar. She would tell people that she was born into a sacred Indian temple. Her father, she claimed, was a Brahmin priest, and her mother had been a sacred dancer of the temple dedicated to Shiva. Mata Hari told her fans that she was adopted by the priests and dedicated to the service of the temple Kanda Swani. That was when she claimed to have learned the ancient dances of the Kama Sutra. Mata Hari also performed as a spy. Well, almost. She agreed to spy twice. May 1916, she accepted 20,000 francs from a German diplomat to pass on intelligence. But in fact, she didn't actually do anything because she regarded the money as compensation for some furs that the Germans had confiscated. The second time was in September 1916, when she was approached by the French to become Agent H21. She had fallen in love with a 21-year-old Russian captain. She was twice his age and desperately needed the very large sum of money they offered her. From the start, however, the French authorities were suspicious. Her multiple liaisons and frequent crossings of borders, which she could do as a citizen of neutral Holland, made Captain Georges Ladoux, head of French counter-espionage, sceptical of her trustworthiness. When she seduced a German officer and passed on some insignificant information to Ladoux, he had, he thought, the proof that he needed. Now, the German officer she seduced also suspected her. Knowing that the French had access to their radiograms, he sent out a message identifying her as an informant. Now, Ladoux probably knew that the radiograms were false, but he did not reveal this in the court-martial. I mean, we may want to ask who, in fact, was the evil one here. Mata Hari, therefore, was arrested in Paris, 13th of February 1917, and court-martialed. She was accused of revealing state secrets, including the movement of French troops. The tribunal took less than 45 minutes to find her guilty and to sentence her to death. Now, numerous stories surround her final days in prison. I think one of my favorite ones is about her actions when told that she would not be given a reprieve. One of the nuns watching over her was crying, and so, it was said, Mata Hari jumped up, saying, "Sir, Marie, you have never seen me dance. Well, dry your tears. I am going to dance for you alone." She danced as she had never danced before, and the poor little nun, with the tears still wet on her cheeks, stared fascinated at this dance of death, the last that Mata Hari, so full of life, would ever perform. She was executed 15th of October 1917. No one came forward, not one of her lovers came forward to claim her body. So it was unceremoniously sent for dissection by the Parisian medical faculty. She was 41 years of age. Okay, so these are the bare bones of the story. Although Mata Hari was no saint, these facts, I think, don't deserve the label evil woman. But evil was the accusation. The prosecutor at her court-martial identified her main offences. He turned what sounds, to me at least, to be admirable traits into suspect ones. For example, he pointed to the ease with which she expresses herself in several languages, especially French, her subtle ways, her aplomb, her remarkable intelligence, making these attributes sound, in fact, damning. He also spoke of her numerous relations, meaning sexual ones, and her immorality, congenital or acquired, thus hinting that she was a degenerate, a topic that obsessed French and German psychiatrists at the time. Her interrogation officer was similarly harsh. After sort of wrongly implying that Mata Hari suffered from a sexually transmitted disease, he denounced her for being feline, supple, and artificial, used to gambling everything and anything without scruple, without pity, always ready to devour fortunes, leaving her ruined lovers to blow their brains out. She was, he concluded, a born spy. In the decades following her execution, Mata Hari has continued to be vilified. Her name is synonymous with spy. It was even the code word used by the CIA after 1919 to refer to their operatives. 1930, for example, the Saturday Review published an assessment of Thomas Colson's biography of the dancer spy. The reviewer criticized Mata Hari for her clever elusiveness. He added that, far from being mystic, aesthetic, romantic, Mata Hari was greedy, sensual, and totally abandoned. The disarming kisses and deadly treachery of this voluptuous creature caused more deaths than can be computed, he concluded. Scientific America also reviewed the biography, commenting on the loathsomeness of her moral fiber. 1986, a reviewer of Russell Warren's Howell's biography felt it proper to focus on Mata Hari's appearance. The first sentence of the review informed readers that she stood 5 feet 9 inches and had absolutely no bust. She rarely smiled and was rarely on time. Readers, however, quickly learn what the reviewer found most objectionable when he informed them that Mata Hari slept with lovers on an almost industrial scale, made the striptease acceptable, and when she was shot by the French in 1917 on charges of espionage for Germany, blew a kiss to her executioners. His review concluded that Howe was unable to disclose by what magic of personality Mata Hari charmed men as infallibly as sugar and arsenic charm flies. But the reviewer contended Howe made at least one reader, meaning himself, who agrees that Mata Hari was superficial, supercilious, and self-indulgent, nevertheless feel a pang of response towards this girl. The girl was 41 years old. Such patronizing comments are not the preserve of male reviewers. As late as 2007, novelist and essayist Florence King contended that it is impossible for a woman to like her because we know only too well what women like her think of the female sex and how they treat us. Yet, she has become a popular villain, like Eve, the evil witch in Sleeping Beauty, the evil witch in Snow White, and Amelia Dyer. People can't seem to get enough of evil women. Since 1993, the Frieze Museum in the town where Mata Hari spent her childhood have dedicated an exhibition to her. During the centenary of her execution, 93,000 visitors visited the museum's exhibition, which also generated at least 733 press articles. The book accompanying the exhibition listed 61 original publications on Mata Hari. There have been many dozens more since then. Biographies have been translated into 26 languages. And films have popularized her image. 1931, Greta Garbo starred in one, while in 1964, Jeanne Moreau was cast in the role. People seem obsessed with her breasts, which were reportedly so small that she had to keep them covered with these beaded brasiers. Feminist scholars have also revived interest in her, most notably, I think, the really brilliant work of Julie Wheelwright, who hailed her as a victim of patriarchal society. Clues to why Mata Hari has attracted so much attention, I think, can be found in Harry Ashton-Wolfe's book called Warped in the Making, which was published in 1928. He described attending a mystic performance in Paris's Musée Guimet, a museum of Asian art. This was where Mata Hari had first danced in 1905 on a stage decorated with authentic Hindu statues from the museum's collection. On entering the room, Ashton-Wolfe recalled that a dusky attendant had given him a sheet of paper containing a translation of an Eastern poem. The setting transported him, he said, to some faraway shrine of the Orient, watched over by a menacing Shiva, the destroyer, and an immense golden Buddha. The museum, he said, was strangely disquieting, monotonous, dreamy, eternal, that caused the skin to creep. He described Mata Hari's dance as a slowly writhing with a sinuous, undulating motion like a huge serpent. He noted that if it was possible for a sinuous reptile to enter the body of a woman, then the miracle was accomplished before my dilated eyes. Writhing, twisting, coiling, with arms, legs, and even the skin undulating and shivering with serpentine grace. As she danced, he recalled, her veils were torn away until she was naked, except for the heavy, glittering chains and necklaces of gleaming stones. It was, he wrote, a dance of death, embodying the cupidity, cruelty, and capricious nature of a woman who willingly accepts the sacrifice of a humble man's life merely to satisfy a whim. Ashton-Wolfe maintained that he had never before seen such subtle expressions of voluptuous languor. So note the words that he's using here: mystical, dusky, the East, shrine of the Orient, music that makes his skin creep, and Mata Hari herself is a sinuous serpent who embodies the cupidity, cruelty, capricious nature of woman. Her nakedness epitomizing voluptuous languor. So these are the main themes that enabled her to be portrayed as the ultimate evil woman: animalistic, racialized, sexually orientalized. As we're going to be seeing now, these tropes are all intertwined, and they were a dangerous mixture when placed in the context of the Great War. First, Mata Hari's performance of femininity played into tropes of women as animalistic, irrational, primitive, wild. According to one Viennese reporter, she was slender and tall, with the flexible grace of a wild animal. Another journalist judged her to be so feline. She epitomized, yet another, a wild, voluptuous grace. She was snake-like. As late as 1999, an historian writing in military history began his article with the sentence, "Her long, snake-like limbs writhed with sensuality to the Eastern music that flowed from the strings of a lone sitar." Second, she was racialized. Connections between the exotic and darkly pigmented skin are, of course, a racist staple. In the late 19th and early 20th century, it was not uncommon for dancers belonging to the expressionist dance movement to paint their bodies a dark shade. These subtle expressions of the primitive as natural, free, ungovernable became flagrant when commentators turned to Mata Hari. Highly prerogative, racist terms were bandied about, even though all the protagonists knew that she was Dutch. They described her, in the words of her interrogation officer, as a tall woman with thick lips, dark skin, and imitation pearls in her ears, who somewhat resembled a savage. During another interrogation, she was described as a woman with the swollen lips of a negress, teeth as big as plates. Chief doctor to the police described her as of Asiatic type, something of a savage. In Warped in the Making, Ashton-Wolfe could only make sense of her dance by suggesting that, in fact, she was not really Dutch at all. He noted that Meta Hari was of pure Dutch descent, but, he continued, was without a shadow of doubt Asiatic in features, body and soul. This racialization of Mata Hari's body made her all the more suspect, an otherness to whiteness and Western civilization. Third, Mata Hari performed Orientalism and was Orientalized in turn. Edward Said has famously defined Orientalism as a political vision of reality whose structure promoted the difference between the familiar, Europe, the West, us, and the strange, the Orient, the East, them. Power and domination are at its heart. Fantasies about the Oriental other include assumptions about eternal wisdom and spirituality, an imagined geography that was primitive, sensual, chaotic, mysterious. In Said's words, in the East, one was suddenly confronted with unimaginable antiquity, inhuman beauty, boundless distance. Mata Hari's dance was modelled on her vision of the East as mystical, expressive, exotic, erotic. Her dance celebrated wildness, unbridled passion, spirituality, and the irrational. As we shall see, it had very little to do with Java, India, or any other actual location, but was intended to appeal to Western desires, projected onto a timeless, geographically exotic and primitive fantasy land. Admittedly, there was a germ of subversion in her performance. After all, her dance was a rejection of repressive discourses of her time. It offered her audiences respite from materialism, moralism, stale domesticity. But her dance could only ever be a form of cultural imperialism, which took traditions out of their original context and appropriated them to serve the needs and fantasies of white, Western, and largely male audiences. This is another way of saying that Mata Hari's Orient was a fantasy. She claimed to have been born in Java to a mother who was descendant from a Javanese regent. She immodestly professed to having been a priestess in the cult of Shiva. Undaunted by facts, she would regale people with stories of India, meaning both the subcontinent and the isles of the Dutch Indies. She claimed to have real Indian blood in my veins, adding that it is this mixture of blood which binds me to the Buddhists, although I am a Christian. She announced that as a child, I learned in the house of my grandmother the holy dances performed before the statues of gods. Actually, she said, these are not dances but ceremonies. For each god, there are special prayers accompanied by special gestures. When I am dancing the dance of the Vishnu, one must understand that Vishnu is the god of life, love, and fertility. When I am dancing for Indra, you need to know that he is the god of war. And when I am dancing for Shiva, that he is the god of destruction. These were lies. It is highly unlikely that she had any training in Javanese dance. Matthew Isaac Cohen, expert on Javanese history, observed that although Mata Hari would probably have witnessed the Javanese dancing girls in the streets and theatre, it is unlikely that she would have participated in local social dances or indeed studied that complex dance form. He rather dryly commented that Needless to say, there are no Javanese temple dances in Islamic Java, no Javanese traditions of nude dancing, no dancing before idols. Her exposed midriff and beaded metallic bra referenced images of Hindu dance found on ancient Javanese as well as Indian temples, but the style was unknown in modern Java. Matahari created her own fantasy of Java, weaving together a variety of sources, including classical Javanese statuaries that she might have observed in Dutch museums. Cohen is also incredulous that anyone in the audience would have believed her half-baked ideas, which were figments of the dancer's own fertile imagination. Indeed, some did not believe her. The famous ballerina Charlotta Zambelli, who once appeared on stage alongside Matahari, reportedly sneered that she is as much an Indian dancer as I am a Chinese waitress. But of course, veracity was not what Matahari was selling. And that was the problem. Her animalized, racialized, and sexually orientalized performances were a dangerous blend during a world war that was slaughtering thousands, tens of thousands of people, mainly young men, every day. This was a new form of warfare, total, all-embracing, ruinous. In France, there was turmoil, even talk of revolution. The French army was suffering defeat. On the home front, rationing was creating unrest. For the first time, war required governments everywhere to mobilize the full power of the state, and not only to the destructive effort, but also to morale. Vast propaganda machines were assembled, fostering fears that internal traitors were, wittingly or not, providing intelligence to the enemy. A typical example is this poster from 1915, warning people to keep quiet, be on your guard, enemy ears are listening. The fact that only 56 people in France were convicted and executed for espionage during the First World War strongly suggests that the spy mania was exaggerated. Exaggerated or not, the spy mania that swept throughout the globe was highly influenced by assumptions about women's innate deceptiveness. As young men were being slaughtered on the battlefields, questions were asked about the conduct of their womenfolk. Were they profiteering from the war? Even French mutinettes, who were doing extremely dangerous work, were vulnerable to this accusation because their high wages were reportedly being spent on luxuries. Heedless of the sufferings of men in war, were women exploiting the war situation to grab social and economic privileges that were previously the prerogatives of men only? Matahari was the ideal scapegoat. Rumors even spread that she had demanded large quantities of rationed milk to be sent to the prison in which she wanted to bathe. Worse, her treachery was estimated to be responsible for the deaths of 50,000 French soldiers. A preposterous claim, but one that was propagated widely, started with the police captain. Newspapers blamed her for the disastrous Battle of Verdun, calling her, in the words of Le Journal, a sinister Salome who played with the heads of our soldiers in front of the German herald. Of course, this scapegoating of Matahari as a modern-day Salome was not untypical. If we fast forward to 1963, 21-year-old showgirl Christine Keller's sexual entanglements with John Profumo, Secretary of State for War and a Soviet naval attaché, stroke spy, led to accusations of threats to national security and espionage. The scandal helped bring down the Conservative government in 1964. Keeler's humiliation emerged in the context of the Cold War. Racism, Keeler's Caribbean boyfriends, and her sexual deviance. There was a twist in this espionage scandal, which I wish I could talk more about, but that is its Britishness. Working class Keeler was also the victim of a rigid class system. She had no chance of justice when faced with aristocratic privilege. The affair saw the invention of the term horizontalize. In the words of the authors of Among the New Words for 1999, the word emerged in connection with Keeler. Said, she was a call girl whose second profession was espionage. Christine horizontalized herself to the secrets she wanted to obtain. Similar response could be seen in relation to Jane Fonda. After visiting Vietnam in 1972, she was held responsible for the deaths of thousands of American men, as well as the loss of the war to America. While little attention was paid to the more than 300 other American peace activists who visited Vietnam around the same time as Fonda, she was demonized due to her sexualized celebrity status. In other words, here's the point I'm trying to make. What made these women evil was not simply that they were wrongly accused of undermining the war effort. What was unforgivable was that they were sexy. Sluttish spies are incredibly dangerous because of men's uncontrollable sexual needs. Women unfairly exploit this innate vulnerability. Evil women are castrating ones. They use their erotic talents to manipulate men and in the process to free themselves from the shackles of normative femininity. This point can be illustrated by looking at representations of female spies in film. I'm just going to look at one because of time. Raymond Bernald's 1937 film Martha Arcade was based on the spying exploits of a heroine during the First World War. The lead character, a real person, the lead character spied for the French by infiltrating a German spy network in Stockholm. In the film, the German who ordered the execution of Richard's parents had a mistress, a famous dancer, whose name in the film is Mata Hari. While Richard is portrayed as elegant, patriotic, chaste spy, the character named Mata Hari is vulgar, morally degenerate, sluttish. Ricard once exclaims in the film, "You're dressed, I didn't recognize you." Ricard, in other words, is the acceptable female spy. The Mata Hari character points to the dangers of female sexuality. Spies like Mata Hari, the real one, as well as the one in the film, are incapable of true patriotism, the good spy, but act only out of an urge to sexual power. In the book Spies and Secret Service, 1914, Hamel Grant even claimed that appealing to patriotism leaves the female spy, in his words, cold and unenthusiastic, since love of country is a quality which depends too largely on an essentially platonic and impersonal principle to attract and hold for long her undivided interest and attention. In other words, the female spy was incapable of the abstract thought required for espionage. In contrast, appealing to her lusts was invariably effective. 1918. Only a few months after Matahari's execution, the sexual treachery of women in times of war focused on another dancer. The person at the center of this scandal was Maud Allan, who, like Matahari, was part of the expressionist dance movement and famous for her performance of Oscar Wilde's Salome. Britain, too, you see, was struggling in the war, and spy mania was rife. Allan's erotic dancing style, much like Matahari's, had made her famous. But by 1918, her popularity was fading. As historian Jodie Mead put it, the very attributes which had once enticed the Edwardian public had been reinscribed as national dangers by this time. Allan was also a very close friend, probable lover, of Margot Asquith, the wife of the Prime Minister, who was a known sapphist or lesbian. The scandal erupted after Noel Pemberton Billing, MP and leader of the Vigilante Society, published a report on the front page of the Vigilante entitled "The Cult of the Clitoris." Note, this is 1918, first time the word in a newspaper, the cult of the clitoris. He accused Allan of sexual degeneracy and being part of a movement that was responsible for all the British failures in the war. Pemberton Billing believed that she was one of 47,000 German agents who have infested this country, agents so vile and spreading debauchery of such lasciviousness as only German minds could conceive and only German bodies execute. Alluding to Allan's friendship with Margot Asquith, he complained that wives of men in supreme position were entangled. In lesbian ecstasy, the most sacred secrets of the state were being betrayed, opening up fruitful fields for espionage. In other words, Allan was being accused of using her erotic dance as a sexually degenerate lesbian to spy for the Germans. So Allan, in other words, is the lesbian equivalent of Matahari. Now, she did sue for obscene and criminal libel, but after an extremely public trial, Pemberton Billing was acquitted. As with Matahari, this is a powerful example of how, in the heightened passions of war, panics associated with spying were linked to anxieties around female sexuality. Just to conclude, Matahari was the embodiment of the evil woman for her role as an alleged spy who provided military intelligence to the Germans. In 2017, the French government released a report, nearly 1,300 pages long, which included the evidence used at her court-martial. It revealed that she probably did not do what she was accused of. And if she had spied, the information she passed on to the Germans was utterly insignificant. Although her death was a direct result of her bungled attempts as a spy, her demonization as evil was never about her acts of treachery. In the midst of a bloody war, which France seemed to be losing, Matahari was an ideal scapegoat. Even though her erotic powers were waning and her dancing career had collapsed, she represented a kind of performance of femininity that directly threatened a beleaguered masculinity. Her delirious, orientalized eroticism had no place in a France reeling after the death of more than 377,000 French soldiers during the Battle of Verdun, the longest and most deadly battle of the war. While men were making the ultimate sacrifice, Matahari's sensuality made her the perfect evil woman. Perhaps her true legacy, though, should be in her defiance. Let me conclude, therefore, with what I think is a very beautiful poem. It's only part of the poem, so please look it up yourself. This time by Judith Bourke, spelled B-E-R-K-E, entitled Matahari in St. Lazare Prison, 1917. It ends like this. Dance for me, my cellmate said, and the sister too, all of them. I realized again I had no country. The only country I ever had was my body. And I danced then, 40 years old, my hair horrible, grey from not dying. But from their faces it could have been opening night at the Musée Guimet. The place dark, Shiva, his 4 golden arms behind me. I'm almost naked. Just the 2 little capolas on my breasts, pearls around my wrists and ankles. And I'm not dancing for them. I'm dancing for my life, which I give to them just for these few moments. It's a beautiful poem, I think. That's it for today. I'm going to look forward to seeing you all again on the 18th of March, same time, same place, for Nurse Ratched. She's the nurse, of course, of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and it's called Nurse Ratched, Evil Nurses. See you there, and have a good rest of the day.